The World Cup is dead. Long live the World Cup. We are through the pool stage. We are into the knockouts. 16 teams arrived. Only 8 remain. Next week it'll be 4. The week after it'll be 2. Though 2 teams will need to hang around and play a bronze final, which everyone is very excited about.
There's always a bit of whiplash around this, isn't there?
Yeah.
When you watch the World Cup, in a way, the best bit is the celebration of everybody coming together and, all the smaller teams getting their opportunity. And it always feels so distant at the start of the tournament, doesn't it? The bit we're about to get into, the serious bit, where the best teams try and knock each other out and get to the very top.
Yeah, so that is where we've reached. What we're going to do is break down less a preview of the quarterfinals, but more who can win the World Cup from here. Because it's felt very much like that attitude has changed since the start of the tournament. Yeah. At the beginning, we both put England at an upwards of 90% chance of winning the competition. That, I think, has changed and slipped week on week.
Yeah, I think when you're in the tournament, you start to realise that when England come up against either Canada or the Black Ferns or France or whoever, right? It's just a rugby match at that point. It just requires something like what happened in the last World Cup final, where obviously Lydia Thompson got her red card, or somebody drops a ball in, a really tight game, or something like that can swing the whole World Cup.
I think a big bit of it is the fact it's actually more than a rugby match, right? And I think if this was just a succession of 6 games, right, and England were going to play 6 individual test matches, and they knew the first 3 fixtures in advance, but then they were going to get the next 3 as they went, and they will likely be, Scotland, France or Ireland, then the Black Ferns or Canada, right? They would win all of them. If you put the pressure of it being a World Cup and it being knockout games, all of that suddenly changes, because that is the one area, the one doubt on the Red Roses, the one area they've struggled in or they've faltered in over the last 8 years, really, right?
Yeah.
Where they've been pretty consistent in winning everything. They've only lost to 2 teams over the last 9 years. They've lost, I think, 3 games in the last 8 years. Their rate is ridiculous, and obviously only 1 game in the last 5. And that was the World Cup final. So suddenly, that throws up massive doubts. They haven't done it before.
Yeah. In terms of who handles the pressure best, the team you have to look to has to be New Zealand.
Yes.
They are a cup rugby team. Often between World Cups, the Black Ferns will have blips. They've lost to Canada, they've lost to France, they've lost several times to England in the last few years. However, you look at the last World Cup final, they showed up when it mattered. And typically, historically, that is something that the New Zealand national women's team have done really, really well.
2014, 2017, 2021, those World Cups, right? New Zealand's worst game were the first 2 pool games. By the last pool game, they were humming and they were ready, and then they got better each knockout game, right? Whether it went straight to semis or whether it started at quarters. They got better and better and better and improved as they went on. Obviously, 2014, that didn't go so well because they lost one of those games, but 2017, 2021, they went on to go from actually England are probably favourites here to winning the tournament.
Yeah.
And England are even greater favourites here, being on home soil, and yet it feels like we are starting to see the Black Ferns do the same process and hum.
Yeah. It's quite scary, isn't it?
It is.
That they seem to have gone better with every single game. They love that kind of party wrecker attitude. And, a friend of the channel, Ella Ferguson, shouted them out as the coolest rugby team on the planet. And I couldn't agree more.
Brazil, but...
That's true. But they have the style of play that is I don't think I've seen a team that enjoy themselves more than the Black Ferns, because
Brazil, but...
they are incredibly good at... Again, the basics of just understanding, how to play in each kind of test match, and also just catch pass. Yeah. They are better than any team in the world at catch pass. And the thing that's kind of got me about the Black Ferns is, especially in that game against Ireland, how good they are at working on the fly, at improvising, at looking what the defence are presenting to them and going, okay, how do we work around this? You look at, for instance, this try that Maya Joseph sets up for Braxton Sorensen-McGee on the left wing. I imagine this is a completely improvised move. They've looked at the defence and they've gone, brilliant. We'll send Stacey Wacker to go hard. We'll get Maya Joseph to loop out the back. Then potentially it will open up the space to throw the dummy and then give it to Sorensen-McGee on the edge. You look at this try as well, where they go to play it off 12, and it's a very common move that a lot of teams run. They play via Sylvia Brunt, who is one of the best ball-playing 12s in the world. And instead of getting 13 to run hard off her, because it's off a line-out, they instead use tight head prop Amy Rule to run this hard line here, with fly half Rua Hydemant, who's one of the best kind of string pullers in the game, in the boot. However, instead, they just skip straight across the face to Stacey Wacker. The whole Irish defence is based around this one pod in the middle of the field. But instead, they just take them out of the equation. Walker then gets it out of her hands, and the catch pass from Renee Holmes here is absolutely elite. She holds her feet, catches it, lifts it straight across her face to Sorrison McGee, who again scores in the opposite corner.
And Holmes' body language as well, right? The way she straightens the line. There's nothing selfish about it at all, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's all entirely thinking about the defender and fixing them and then their teammate who's about to receive the ball in a moment's time. However, I think there's more to this Blackburn style of play as well. Because, as you say, that catch pass, those basics, those fundamentals of the game, the raw talent in this team. Another friend of the channel, Az Soper, made a point, I think, she put in very drastic terms as a Blackburns fan, but to kind of boil it down a bit and maybe make it slightly more fair. If you were to look at the two programmes, right, England and the Black Ferns, England are probably about 80% programme and 20% talent. The Black Ferns are probably the other way around, and it's 80% talent, 20% programme, right? And this England team have built a system that churns out rugby players and gets good rugby players to be the best possible version of themselves, right? Basically, that entire England squad are at their ceiling at the minute, right? And are as good as they possibly
Whilst also being generational talents, of course, across the board.
There's a bunch of generational talents in there. There's also a bunch of like very good players who've just been brought up to be the best they could ever possibly be,
100%,
right?
yeah.
Where the Black Ferns team is full of just even more generational talents who are being taken to a very good standard, but not necessarily like in the way this England team just keep pumping out players.
Yeah.
So they're a bit reliant on that. But that also gives you, when you've got 25 of them in your 30-player squad, right? 25 players who are unbelievable athletes and in the top like 50 players in this tournament, right? In terms of like raw ability and talent, that gives you something you can work with. And it then means that if you've got a game plan and you look at the Alan Buntings, Ricky Flutys of the world in that coaching panel, have done a really smart job of getting them into situations where they can use that skill set especially. And this comes back to something we talked about with the Red Roses after their opening game against the USA, right? So the USA managed to generate massive momentum and massive yardage by targeting short sides.
Yes.
So the Red Roses defence, led by obviously John Mitchell himself, former defence coach, is incredibly aggressive in the middle of the field. So they will fly up and they want to kill your momentum and push you back like 5 metres at a time. They're not looking for huge shots. It's not like South African men who really do like try and press you on and cause knock-ons. They're just looking to push you back like a yard on yard and keep you behind the gain line each time, but they're incredibly aggressive there. However, the short side, they tend to leave their resources off, right? So if there's 15 metres there, they won't leave that. Those players will just stand passively and make a soak-up tackle. The USA identified this really smartly and were able to use that short side to just generate momentum on momentum. And even when England did adapt to this in the second half, it led to some misreads and able to create some momentum by creating clean breaks down the short side or, open up space for a chip in behind because they brought Mo Hunt up from the backfield into that line. So this is something that we know the Red Roses have as a work on, where you can get to them. The Black Ferns against Ireland ran this play, and I think this is fascinating. It led to a try for Stacey Wacker in the first half, and they start on one wing, right? They work one phase in field, they work a second phase in field, they create a blind side now on this short side. And you'll notice, if you watch the players on this side, right, everyone but Georgia Miller works round to the far side. Even the blindside winger, Portia Woodman-Whitcliffe, works round to this side, leaving just Miller on her own in case they go for a cross kick or something, because she's good enough, she can play basically any role. The other 14 players are all either there's 2 in the ruck, there's obviously a scrum half as well. Everyone else is on this side. So they have 11 players up against 6 defenders, right? Because Ireland still, they've got to spread the full width across. And also, they are reacting to this last second. Like, New Zealand bring them round in 2 waves. Like 2 groups, like 4 or 5, coming round at once, and it overloads. So they start with one deep line, and you've kind of got the playmakers here, and Ireland are watching for this. Last second, Michaeli too comes in from having been like on the 10's shoulder to running a flat line between the defenders. You've got 2 defenders watching for the playmakers, expecting a pass to go deep. She comes in, Michaeli too, really flat, really sharp, and goes straight through a gap, opened up because they're watching for the sheer numbers there, right? You then have the offload. This comes in, there is, a moment of it looking like it's going to ground, but then they just keep the ball so fast and they use those numbers on the short side. And with a lot of teams, right, if you've got 5 players in 5 metres, that would be overkill and you won't be able to do anything with it. But with the sheer skill set, sheer catch pass of this Black Ferns team, they were able to one by one take out every Irish defender until Stacey Wacker is going over and still has support, right? If there's an extra defender coming across in the backfield or anything, she could still draw and give. So it is an unbelievable way of using those players and using that skill set, but also it critically really targets the weakness in England's defence.
Yeah, 100%. And that also comes back to the amount of playmakers there are in this Black Ferns 15. You look at Rene Holmes, aside from real high demand, this is the fly half. You look at Rene Holmes has stepped up to that like brilliantly and has made herself kind of undroppable at this point, which has been an incredible like redemption story from not being picked for pack 4 and is now up and is now a key player for this team. You look at Sylvia Brunt, highlighted there as another potential one. Braxton Sorensen-McGee, somebody that we've seen can play in boots, can be a bit of a kind of like secondary, not necessarily primary, but secondary kind of passer of the ball or offloader. And the thing is that doesn't compromise what they need elsewhere in their back line, because you look at their back row, in that they essentially have an extra backline reserve in there. You look at, you mentioned there Lina Mikaele Tuwu, who is an incredible player, who's like in attack plays like an extra centre and defensively plays like an extra second row.
Michaeli Two and Georgia Miller are basically extra 12 and 13.
That's it. So you look at her, they've had back Kuiper Awesome-Baker, who is a proper number 8, but is a proper offloading number 8 as well, who can draw in so many players. And you mentioned there the sheer X factor of Georgia Miller, who has been potentially the form player in this tournament. She has been used by New Zealand as an extra centre/winger. They often they use her as an edge forward. They don't like her hitting too many breakdowns because they want her on their feet, because she can create something out of nothing like not many players in this tournament. You look at this against Japan, where off a line-out they use her as a third winger. They get her running in the boot as a strike runner exclusively, and she scores a try off there. And this against Ireland, where they use her as a fly half in the boot. You know, they can use her as a really mouldable rugby player, that she's not limited by the number on her back. And they have so many roles for her, and I can't help but wonder what Ricky Flutie has up his sleeve, because not only are there endless amounts of plays you can use for Georgia Miller, but also, and we said the same thing 3 years ago, but I don't think we've seen that much of their kicking game yet, the Black Ferns, and I think that will only come out in kind of the last 2 games of the World Cup, should they advance this weekend.
Yeah, that's going to be the really exciting thing, isn't it, is how they build beyond that. Because England, I think we've seen broadly their entire game plan used, because they are so dominant, right? And they might have odd set-piece moves and odd ideas they're going to bring out.
Their playbook will be endless, but their game plan, we've probably seen
I don't think England are holding anything back at the minute, right?
Yeah.
And that has been enough to dominate everyone for 5 years, other than one game. So one of the big question marks that's been hanging over England, right, from this perspective, is since that last World Cup final, they haven't played in a tight game, really. So Canada got out to a decent lead with them, but by the end, England has still run away with that.
Yeah.
And it's been the growing question mark is when they come up against Canada, and we'll talk about Canada in a minute, New Zealand, potentially France, potentially Ireland, in this tournament, can they see out a tight game? Because they've never known how to do it.
Yeah.
And the one time they had to recently, 3 years ago against New Zealand, they fell short of the final hurdle and lost that final line out. This has been the big question.
Yeah. Obviously, from John Mitchell's perspective, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
You don't want to be in a tight game. You set out every single game to run away with it. However, I get your point, because the tightest game that there have been in this World Cup cycle, we've talked about this a lot on the channel before, but Jess Breach was on record as saying like she was about to break down into tears because she thought she was about to lose. Her first game as an England player, she has got 50 caps and she's never lost a test match, which is crazy. But
She's got 50 tries in that.
There is that question of, like, we don't know the answer because we don't know what England are like in a tight game.
However, right, there is this one angle on this, and people keep bringing this up because the last World Cup final was tight and the game against Canada in the semi-final was tight. We don't know these will be tight games.
Yeah.
For all we know, England might run away with these again.
It's entirely possible.
And I think all of us have kind of, in watching this World Cup and watching the Black Ferns in Canada and France, as the tournament's gone on, be exceptional and run away with games.
Yeah.
Kind of gone like, oh, they'll push England.
Sure.
We don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know relative to that level if there is still the gap there has been in past years, right?
Yeah.
And we've seen England in the last few years beat the Black Ferns by 12, 15 points. We've seen them beat Canada in the end, even after that, players almost breaking down into tears. We've seen them go on and win that game by, I think it was like 14 points in the end. It was 2 scores at least. So there is every chance that their system is so dominant and they've continuously added to the game. It's something you look at, like, Sadia Kabaya was asked recently about, like, what does she think she's, worked on the hardest in the lead up to this World Cup? And she said it's linking with the backs and it's being able to work in those wide channels and kind of link up there. And we're seeing that as a big emphasis in their game. You look at the way Marley Packer's now popping up in those wide channels as well, which is something she was never really doing previously in her career. And now she's popping up and throwing, like, massive miss passes. So there's a real growth and a real change in this England team. And I think they recognise that they can't be as one-dimensional as they were 3 years ago.
Sure.
And they were very reliant when they got into games against the big teams on their backs and on the likes of Abby Dow producing bullshit and the likes of Ellie Dunn producing bullshit. And I think they know they can't rely on that anymore.
Yeah.
And they are much more expansive. And I think there's been a little bit of people going back and thinking of this England team as a team they were 3 years ago. And actually think they are a better and more rounded team and a more
100% they are.
capable and bigger team. They've got a much broader game plan.
Yeah, and one area where we've really seen them round out their game has been their kicking game.
Yeah.
I think that's something that Lou Meadows in particular, since coming into this fold as attack coach, has really wanted to improve on with this England team. You look at, they've had Ollie Aitchison as their starting 10 for most of this World Cup cycle. She's recently had an ankle injury, and they've been leaning on Zoe Harrison, who is just as good, frankly, and an extremely good game manager, kind of again, string puller.
Classic 10.
Yeah, and has been doing a brilliant job. Helena Rowland as well has stepped in and done a really good job of that. So there's a lot of different players in this England backline who they can lean on for that.
Yeah.
I do think we'll probably learn a little bit this weekend as they line up against Scotland. So Scotland are an interesting one because I think England put 50 points on them in the Six Nations earlier this year, and Scotland are the sort of team who hate to go down without fighting. You know, that they love just being in the fight at all times. They've got an extremely ambitious coaching team and leadership group with Brian Eason's potentially final game here as Scotland head coach. Rachel Malcolm, their captain, is extremely outspoken about how high she wants this Scotland team to go, how capable she thinks they are. They've got so many brilliant players out wide. You look at Fran McGee's been on unreal form this World Cup, has scored in every game so far. Rona Lloyd on the other wing has been outstanding. Evie Gallagher at number 8 has been kind of the defensive queen of this tournament. They have a lot of really good players who can challenge England, and obviously there is probably about a 1% chance of them actually winning it, considering what's happened in the Six Nations.
The chances of Scotland beating England are very low. The chance of them going on to winning the tournament from there are even lower.
It would be their World Cup final.
Can they back up and do it 3 weeks in a row?
Exactly.
Is the real question. Right?
Exactly that.
And there was a reason that Rachel Malcolm said before the Canada game last week that they have to win this to stand a chance of winning the World Cup, really.
Yeah.
Because I think everyone in Scotland knows how big the gap is between them and England still.
Yes.
However, if you look at the Six Nations this year, right, they were blown out of the water in the first half. It was 42-0 at half-time. Then second half, I believe the score was 19-7.
Yeah.
For the second half. So, there is a sign that they can frustrate England and they can get into a mood. And there was real moments in that game where Helen Nelson's kicking game and the forward pack did a really good job of disrupting them. And also Scotland are so good at keeping hold of the ball.
Yes.
And I think there's a chance they can keep the score much lower than you'd expect.
I agree.
And make England sweat a bit.
I think that first half will actually be a real fight between Scotland and England because, again, Scotland have nothing to lose.
Yeah.
They're going to turn up and look to kind of knock a few of England's pieces off the board. And I feel like that's exactly what they can afford to do.
Get Jim Telfer out. This is your Everest, girls.
Indeed.
Give it a shot. Give it a go. I don't think Scotland contends to win the whole tournament.
I sadly don't.
Likewise,
as much as I would love them to.
As the same as South Africa.
Yeah.
So, look, we've learned from men's rugby, never write a South African team out in knockouts.
Yeah.
However, this team's goal was to reach the knockouts. I think the Black Ferns will be a bridge too far. I think if they were playing a few of the other teams in these knockouts, they could really give them a game.
Yeah.
But their pack is huge, and what they need to be learning from this is, right, in what areas can we challenge a full-strength Black Ferns team?
Yes.
Can we challenge them at the scrum? Yes, they certainly can, I think. Can we disrupt their line out? Can we disrupt them with the kicking game? Can we hold them out for long phases at a time? This is about 4 years' time, and can they learn enough and show enough from this team that in 4 years' time they can be keeping them to within a score and potentially pushing on, as we've seen Ireland, develop over the last 4 years.
Additionally, Swayze de Brain's opted for a 7-1 bench,
yes,
which is really exciting.
Which I love.
Yeah, and again, the South Africans have shown that set piece area is where they're strong. Because they're a big physical pack. And I'm really excited to see if they can, again, ruffle a couple of feathers with his Black Ferns team.
You look at 3 years ago, last World Cup, Black Ferns had a very similar quarter-final against Wales, who were a team with a very good pack, who disrupted them at the scrum, but didn't really have anything else, right? And South Africa do critically have Malinga, Brahan Rodolph, Nadine Roos. Their backline is probably stronger than Wales's, who were kind of at
Libby
the time...
Jans van Rensburg's been on exceptional form this World Cup.
Wales at the time, their backline perhaps wasn't firing at all. I don't think that's unfair to say. But they had a scrum that was disrupting the Black Ferns. And so they're going into a very similar game, and I think we might see a quite similar game, except South Africa have the advantage of having a couple of bullshit players in the backline.
Yeah.
And having the likes of Malinga, could I see, break through and score a try out of nowhere.
She is Jets.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, Briandre Dolph there, she's been on really good form at the back, really good sidestepper.
And also, Cesar Hele.
Yes.
Right? And that is the factor we're not talking about.
Hele! way.
I can't see South Africa beating the Black Ferns, but I think they can give them a proper game.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
Therefore, you kind of rule them out of contention. Australia, the other team we haven't mentioned, and they got through on points difference over the USA.
Yeah.
Obviously drew that incredible game. But how do you rate their chances?
So fun stat about Australia. They are the team who has been winning against England for the longest duration of time in, I want to say, like 6, 7
Since the
years.
last World Cup,
Since the last World Cup. There we go, so only 3 years.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, of course, because New Zealand have been winning that
did
game
actually. They're
for
still
3
winning
years
it.
now.
They're still winning it,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, since the last World Cup, they're the team that has been beating England for the longest duration of time. Granted, that duration was about 20 odd minutes.
Yeah.
You know, but that's still quite impressive. This Australian team, I love to watch. Yeah. They're one of my favourite teams as a spectator in this World Cup because that backline that they have is like, there's so many like really exciting players. You've got Desi Miller on one wing, you've got Maya Stewart on the other, you've got Georgina Fredericks outside centre, and I think the kind of gun of this tournament has been Caitlin Hulse at fullback.
Anyone ever been more nailed in for Breakthrough Player of the Year than Caitlin Hulse is right now?
I mean, she does have Braxton Sorensen McGee up against her, but
I would genuinely take Caitlin Hulse.
Really?
I think she's been that impressive, that critical for Australia.
The thing is, they're very different players,
They
is
are.
the thing. Because Braxton Sorensen McGee is a proper like wonder kid who comes in, scores tries, does all the flashy stuff, and she's incredible. She's world class. Caitlin Hulse is like, you can't convince me she's 18.
Yeah.
Because she's so cool and composed. Like, she plays like a 26-year-old with
exactly.
40 caps, you know, and she's just really good at everything a fullback needs to be.
Caitlin Hulse plays like she's been the Wallaroos' best player for 5 years.
Yeah.
She hasn't.
Also,
she's 18.
she knows she's the shit as well, and I love that.
Yeah, she was in school last year, never mind the last World Cup.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But she's brilliant. There is, now, okay, they have got an easier quarterfinal draw than some other teams, but how do you rate their chances?
Playing against Canada is a really tough quarterfinal. That I don't fancy them to win it because Canada, again, when you flip that onto the question we were saying earlier about the Black Ferns, they're a team that when the pressure starts to come on, they start to cook.
Yeah.
And they look good under pressurised conditions. So I feel like Australia will give them a good first half and will score the best try of the knockout phases. And then Canada will just go up a gear or two.
I think this is the thing. When I say easier quarterfinal, I don't mean like easier to win. But the thing is, right, the Black Ferns and England are both kind of flat track bullies. Yeah. And they love to beat a team by 60 points.
Yeah.
They love to put 80 on a team if they can. Where Canada aren't really like that. And you kind of saw that against Wales in particular, where they could have ran up their score a lot more. And they were just kind of like quite calm, kicking the ball a lot and pinning them back.
You look at the Fiji game.
With it. Fiji,
the first half, they were actually quite, like, not really
lackadaisical.
Yeah,
They're
exactly.
like,
it took them a while to warm up against Fiji.
But
and they kind of give you the same performance against anybody.
Yeah, they stick to a game plan.
Yeah.
They're very strict on it. And the game plan is the most expansive, most open, as we talked about on the channel in detail
Fastest,
a few weeks
crucially.
ago. Yeah. But they stick to it religiously.
Yeah.
And they don't deviate from it, even if it's like, oh, well, actually, we're getting great return from this, so we'll kick the ball less and we'll just run it because this defence is knackered. They did that a little bit in the last 20 minutes against Fiji, and Julia Shell scored 18 billion tries. But it's still been I don't know, like, they're not that team, and yet does that, in a reverse England situation, prepare them to be the best team for winning those tight games?
Never has a horse been darker than Canada this World Cup. Then again, you also kind of can't call them a dark horse because they are genuine contenders. But it's just like, I feel like they're much flashier in their way they go about it than England and the Black Ferns are.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I want to pull out like one moment against Scotland, right?
Yeah.
And I thought this was a really fascinating moment. Doesn't lead to a try. It could have, but Flo Simmons drops the final ball. Just like the setup here is really nice. So quite similar to what I was saying about the Black Ferns earlier, right? But like, there's a shape that's really popularised in men's rugby over the last 5 years. We call it the Tupelotu triangle, right? Where you kind of have the two centres start in one position, the 10 then slides out the boot behind the two centres who play it in behind to them, and you kind of have an instant like two waves of attack from it being fairly flat.
Similar to what I was saying about Sylvia Brunt earlier.
Yeah. Canada here run a really interesting version of that, where they start off with a clear first playmaker. You have Perry stood out as kind of first playmaker, right? You have Tessier as second. They're sort of quite close on each other. It's kind of like, they look kind of like they're going to just sort of dump off ball and Tessier will crash it up or something. Then, as the ball is picked up from 9, Tessier runs an incredibly flat line, comes in really hard, looking like she's spotted something. She's picked an angle, she's coming in incredibly hard. And last second, she then lifts the ball at the back right as Scotland are preparing to make the tackle on her. And the two players around her react onto this. The Scotland defence have bitten onto her, because why would you run this hard line as your centre and break shape if you're not doing that? Instead, they've kind of like reverse engineered, like a reverse Tuapolotu shape. It opens up a gap, Paige Farries goes straight through, and wherewithal timing to hit the pass. Flo Simmons runs a brilliant line here to come in from out wide and adapt in and get right on Farries' shoulder. And if she takes this pass, she's straight over for a try. It's a really smart play. And it's the sort of thing they just have in their locker. And I think this is the first time I've seen a team run this exact shape, right?
Yeah.
There's like similar versions of it and things you can kind of point to. It's like, oh, it's a bit like that. But how many more of these do they have in their locker, right? Things that would just open up a wide defence.
Yeah, that's the question, because they are the most unpredictable team in World Rugby, men's or women's, I would say. And there's a lot you can do with that. You can base on that. So you've got the basic arrowhead that every team in rugby runs from top to the bottom, right? Where you've got a forward, in the middle as the head carrier, you've got someone on their tip-on, you've got somebody as their kind of minus, as their clean-out option. The thing with Canada is that they like to drill all of their forwards to be playmakers. You've got the likes of Sophie de Goody, who is one of the best in the world, brilliant playmaker, great goal kicker, the lot. You've got Emily Totosi, who is excellent under pressure, is a like supreme offloader. You've got the likes of Caroline Crossley, Fabiana Forteza, Gabrielle Sempt, who's on the bench in the quarter-final. all of these are ball players,
Men
right?
in Hun, like all of them.
Yeah,
the
yeah,
props,
they're all
everything.
ball players. There's a huge potential for this of, you know, when the head carrier gets the ball, if we're coming from this direction, you're the minus carrier, in that Tuapolotu shape type manner, they could see the minus carrier slide into the boot there and turn every forward carry into that. And it means you essentially have two more players in your attack than you had previously. You look at the system that Ireland men like to run, which is quite similar to Canada's, in that they like every single member who is on their feet to be a part of the attack. To be either running a line, to be even just on the width calling for the ball, to be in the boot, to just running like a fake line that is never going to realistically get the ball, but is better than standing around with their hands on the pockets, right? And I think there's quite a similarity in that, because there are two obsessions in this Canada team in attack. One of them is that ball-playing nature. Everybody must do it. Everybody, like if you're on your feet, if you've got a jersey on, right, you are going to play the ball. You're going to distribute. You're also going to run hard. You're going to do everything. So if you're a fly half, you need to know how to run hard lines. If you're a prop, you need to know how to run the ball wide and to like get the ball into wide positions, right? The other one is ball speed. That they like to be uncatchable by the opposition. So they have hit what, as far as I'm aware, is a world record lowest ruck speed in international rugby, men's or women's. They have got their average ruck speed down to 2.19 seconds per ruck, which is over a second quicker than Scotland men, who are the fastest in men's rugby, right? And it's faster than, obviously, Ireland men, New Zealand men, who are the other two kind of in that area, right? Which is insanely fast. But that also doesn't account for the times where they just skip out on rucks altogether. You look at this example against Ireland in their pre-World Cup warm-up, where Sophie de Goody is carrying the ball somewhat sideways, but just out from the try line, and she goes, oh, you know what, we're going to next phase go to the back line anyway, so I'm just going to skip that out, and passes the ball over the top to Claire Gallagher at fly half, who can spread the ball wide and get the try in the corner. And as the Irish backline, it's impossible to read this, because if you fly off the line, you have to then retreat if de Goody doesn't pass the ball, and it then means that you're even less prepared for what comes later on. You look at this against Scotland, Tyson Bookaboom carries the ball, and instead of presenting it back, she presents it off the floor for de Goody to just pick it up, scoop it out of her hands. She doesn't have to bend down, not a millisecond is wasted here in de Goody's transfer of the ball to then take it forwards again. And that is it, it's the attention to detail by the millisecond, by the millimetre.
By the Millie David second.
The amount of detail that Kevin Rouet has put on this attack has been supreme. They do not spare anything about this attack.
No. It's extremely French.
Yeah.
There's like a lot of that philosophy, but it's kind of transferred through a completely different way of playing the game. And I love it. I love watching it. There are two more teams we want to talk about, right?
Yes.
So the most enticing quarterfinal, the most kind of potential for an upset, I'd say, France versus Ireland.
Yeah.
Now, Ireland are coming in off the back of a really tricky week. They went in expecting, hoping to beat the Black Ferns. They came out having lost 40 points to 0. However, Aoife Wafer is back. How do we rate Ireland's chances going into this game, but more wider, the whole World Cup?
The Wafer factor we have to talk about. We have to address that, because she is, let's face it, one of the best players in the world on her day. The question is, will it be her day? Because
I think it's almost always has been her day.
Yes, but she has been injured for a long time.
Yeah.
And there is the question of whether they've rushed her back for this.
They definitely have.
Yeah.
I don't want to be like, to put too fine a point on it, but it feels like one of those games where all the time you say like, oh, if it was a World Cup final, they play tomorrow.
Yeah.
But this is their World Cup final,
100%.
right? So they've put her out. And I don't think if it wasn't a World Cup year, she'd be playing in September.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way she'd be playing right now if it was a WXV year. They'd be waiting for her to play in November. She'd be getting a full month off here to recover fully. So, can she play to the fullest of her ability? I don't know. We won't until we see her. But an either way for 80% of her ability is still, one, like, one of the best players in the world, and two, like, probably with respect to the other players, going to be better than your second choice in the position.
Yeah, yeah. She started over Grace Moore, who has been brilliant.
And was their
tournament.
best player against the Black Ferns, so really feel a bit for Grace Moore.
Yeah, yeah. But you are right. She's worth the risk
Yeah.
because she's a world-class player.
Yeah.
With regards to Ireland generally, I can't help but wonder how much is in the tank for them. I think if they won this weekend against France, that would kind of be their World Cup final. That would be like their World Cup miracle, bouncing back from a 40-0 loss at the weekend. But they do have it in them to win this weekend, I think.
Yeah.
That you look at their kicking game, Dana O'Brien is one of the best in the game in terms of like kicking for length. They kick very early in attacking sets typically. They've attacked a lot more in this World Cup, but I do think they'll shut it down against France because they have such a big and aggressive pack, and France are obviously so strong at set piece, so I feel like Ireland won't want to play around in their own half a lot because if they drop the ball, there's a chance that you're letting Rose Burner do into the game.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's something you want to avoid. If you want there to be set pieces, you want them to be in the opposition half where they're going to be, more nerves. There's going to be potential for a missed throw at line-outs. I feel like they will go to that kicking game a lot more. I'm really excited to see how they go.
My gut feeling about Ireland is that they are still a long way off the finished article. They're still building that consistency.
Yeah.
And I said this before the tournament, but I think that win over New Zealand almost came too early because it's leading them to expect to win every game like that.
Sure.
Rather than actually like where they're at is they were pushing every game, or they're pushing a lot of the games. Some of the games won't go their way. Some of the games will very much go their way.
I think their ceiling's higher than where they are at the
Definitely.
moment. And they've got a great coach in Scott Beeman
I
as well.
think where they're at, and a great coaching ticket alongside, I think very much where they're at right now is they have one big result in this tournament in them. They can cause one big upset, and that might take everything out of the tank right now.
I agree.
And their goal is in 4 years' time to be able to do it consistency and produce those results more regularly.
Yeah.
For all we know, that result could come against France because France have looked pretty up and down. However, they do have the one big up with them, which is Pauline Bourdon-Sansus, who I think is the most important player to any team in this tournament by such a clear margin. There's no one that comes close to making the difference on their team that she does to France. The closest is Alex Callender to Wales.
Sure. If we look at France as a chess team, right? Your rook is Emily Boulard. She's someone who will advance you forward and get you on the front foot. Your bishop is a Manet Felayeur, somebody who can like cut across the field and take people out.
Only carry sideways.
Yes.
Diagonally,
Yeah. Your knight is Medusa Falreclos, somebody who's like the dark horse who just like will come in and just like out of nowhere just blindside people and level them and move forward, right? Your king and your queen at the same time are Pauline Bourdon-Sansus.
Sure.
She's the person that you have to protect at all costs, that everything runs around.
Yeah.
She's the person that victory like hangs on the hinges of, and also she's the most powerful piece, who can move in all directions at any speed, who can pull out like kicks left, right, like whether they're cross fields, whether they're for territory, whatever. She's extremely strong. Her passing game is unbelievable. Like every single thing they want to do is dependent on Pauline Bourdon-Sansus.
Yeah, that metaphor was stretched a little bit, but I completely agree with you about Pauline, that she is the most critical player because she fundamentally changed the way this team plays. You look at them against Italy, and I think a lot of us and against England in the warm-ups, right? And a lot of us kind of went, they don't look up to much. They don't look like they're very good. Then Pauline comes back from injury, comes back from a little knock, and also having a baby. And suddenly, France look like a completely different team. And I know you can argue they were playing against lower ranked in the world ranking oppositions, and I know you can argue they were playing against lower ranked in the world ranking opposition in those next two games. However, the level of the performance was drastically higher.
South Africa beat Italy, bear in mind. I'm also just realising now that I should have said Gabrielle Vernier was a bishop because she runs that diagonal line inwards. I missed a trick on that. But regardless, the level they went up with Pauline Bourdon-Sansus was ridiculous. You look at her game against Brazil, she was genuinely unplayable. That might be the best individual performance any player's had in this World Cup.
France's average ruck speed in games where Pauline Bourdon-Sansus is starting comes down by almost a full second. It is absurd the difference she makes on a team. It feels, and I've used this metaphor elsewhere, but like she injects the team with licorice, and then she's the one keeping her head, that she inspires chaos from everyone around her, and her whole team's level raises. And it is both in terms of the attack, in terms of what she brings there, but also structure. She is the person who runs the kicking game. She's the person who manages that. She's the person who calls the plays. Often we see her sliding into the 10 position. You look at her kind of, like this try that Grise scores, off a scrum, she starts the scrum off, she then works her way out, positions herself directly opposite her opposite player, and then slides out last second right before the ball comes in, meaning she can beat her, Grise can follow suit and kind of stretch around and create the try. But this is all Pauline, her positioning, her look off the ball, the way she's always scanning, always keeping aware. She's just like so smart.
What's important about that as well is her drifting off opens up more space for a number 8 to crash over. And they've got such a powerful pack with a great scrum that could be game changing.
Look at the try where that did happen, right? It's her drifting off that caused the defender to go with her, looking for an offload, and bam, no, Escudero just goes over and scores herself.
Yeah, you look at this as well, that the way that they use her as a playmaker within the short channels towards the try line, that here, it looks like they're going into a pick and go sequence. It's clearly something that's pre-called. Pauline Bordon-Sansus is chilling behind the ruck, kind of not interested, just going like, all right, lads, you just try drive over, whatever. And then, bam, springs into action. It's called into the boot here. It's used essentially as an extra fly half, which allows Lena Kwar to slide out into the inside centre position. She's extremely good at executing these passes as well, Kwar. Goes for the miss one ball out, and they manage to get the try in the corner for Emily Boulard. Like, the way that they can use Pauline Bordon-Sansus as simultaneously a 9 and a 10 is really useful, but also the partnership with Lena Kwar, who is good equally as a first or a second receiver, is really important.
Yeah, they've used Bourdon in the 10 jersey in the past, France, plenty of times with obviously her partner, Laurie Sansus, well, Bordon-Sansus now. Plenty of times she's worn that 10 jersey, but the way in which they use her as that dual role, she runs the entire game from 9. It's not even in like an Untermac Dupont way where Dupont is running most of the game, then Untermac is waiting for his opportunity.
Yeah.
She's doing both of those jobs. She's doing literally everything.
Yeah.
And so France talked before this tournament, right, about how they want to get rid of all structure whatsoever. That doesn't work most of the time. They look like a team that desperately needs structure until Pauline comes on. And Pauline gives them that structure single-handedly. She is like... I think there's an argument she was the best player in the pool stage, even though she only played 2 games.
There's definitely an argument.
And she fundamentally changed France and turned France, for me, from a team who I thought were going to kind of fall over and be a bit embarrassed, to a team who look like they can win the World Cup.
One thing I love as well...
France's chance of winning this World Cup are 100% can Pauline stay on the field for the full 80 minutes, or at least 78 before they know they've won it. 100%.
You look at that lack of structure thing, that... She loves taking quick taps.
Yeah.
Just half the time her team aren't expecting her to either. And she's just going for them and they're going, right, Pauline's off, we've got to back her. And I always really love it when she's got the ball in her hands when a penalty's given, because you know she's going to go quickly every time. Part of that is just because I love seeing scrum halves take quick taps. That's just fun. Part of that is just because as spectators, we love watching Pauline Bordon-Sansus with a rugby ball in her hands doing something and going, what on earth is she going to do next? And part of that's because she has this sixth sense of when to up the tempo and when to just manage games, because she's equally good at both. And the thing is, when you say about this lack of structure, so much of France's belief in her and not having the captain Mane Felia overrule her, right, is because they know that she can pull something exceptional out the bag at any given moment. And her game is based around doing things that look slightly insane, but because her level of accuracy is so high, most of it sticks.
Yeah, absolutely. The drop goal factor also we haven't seen yet in this World Cup.
Indeed.
She is the premier drop goal in women's rugby, so potentially that is something to have in their locker as well. Interesting. I'm going to move us on.
Yes.
Right? So, we've been playing a game since before this tournament, the percentage game.
Yes.
And what percentage chance would we allot to each of the 8 teams remaining going into these knockout stages? Okay, I'm going to start at the bottom. Scotland, what percentage are we allotting?
Unfortunately, I'm giving them less than a 1%
I give
chance.
them less than 1%. I'd say we're looking at 0.5.
Because they would have to win their 3 World Cup finals in a row.
Yeah.
And I think that's a bridge too far for them.
Agreed. Australia?
Same as Scotland. I would love them to win it.
Australia, I think, is higher than Scotland. I think you're looking around a 1% chance, but no higher than that.
Yeah.
South Africa, likewise. I would put them at, similar to Scotland, a 0.5% chance.
Yeah.
I think between those 3 teams, you're looking at a 1.5% chance, probably.
Sure.
That one of those teams wins the World Cup,
Sure.
maybe 2%.
What about Ireland then?
Ireland, I think, are higher. I'm still not sold on it, but I'm looking at maybe 4-5%.
40-0 is a big old gap.
It is.
I reckon between those 4 teams, I will give them about 1.5%.
I would raise that to maybe 3%.
You reckon?
Yeah, I'll go with that. I'll go with like.
Should we average out on 2% between
Ireland,
those 2 teams?
Ireland 2. I'll give Ireland 2%. Let's say maybe, and the other 2% between them.
Okay.
Or 1%. Yeah. Let's say 3.5%. Let's say 3.5%.
3.5. Okay, we're going big. We're going big.
That leaves 4 teams taking up about 95.5% of the chances.
Yeah.
France,
I would say of the 4, have the smallest chance, but they definitely have a chance.
Yeah. Okay, France without Pauline Bondon-Saint-Sus, I would put about 2%.
Yeah.
France with Bondon-Saint-Sus, I would probably put at 10%.
I reckon.
No, not even 10%. No.
I think I'd give them 6 or 7%.
In terms of actually winning the World Cup, in terms of beating one of the others, I can see them beating.
That was it. Like I
England.
don't think.
But do they win the World Cup?
So
no,
I reckon.
You're right.
I reckon I'd give France 6 or 7%.
Yeah, I go with that. So between those, that's 10% taken out, right?
Sure.
Between those 5.
Sure.
So we've got those 5 kind of out the way. They're taking about 10% of the vote.
Sure.
Let's go with the big 3. England.
I reckon I would put England at around 40%. Sounds about
40%.
right.
That's my gut feeling.
Yeah.
Right? The biggest chunk, but I'm now less than halfway.
You've got to leave a lot of space for the other 2, I think.
Yeah.
New Zealand.
Yeah.
This one is really interesting because every single time I watch them play, that percentage is ballooning.
Yeah.
And there is a chance I come away from this South Africa game and go like, there's no way they don't win it.
Yeah.
Because there was just this point in the Ireland game when Maya Joseph ran in that try at the end and I was like, it flashed before my eyes. Roa Haidemant and Kennedy Tukuafu lifting the World Cup just flashed before my eyes. So I'm going to put them at about 30%, I reckon.
My gut's 30 or 35%.
Yeah.
The thing about this is, I could picture them winning the World Cup anywhere but Twickenham, right? Or against but England.
That would be brutal.
But the thing is, at Twickenham, sold out for the first time for a women's game. Huge crowd, huge occasion. It feels like the day that we know Red Roses fans have been talking about for 5 years.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, this is their big day. This is the thing they've been thinking of, dreaming of for years. And it kind of feels like the day is just set up for destiny for them, right?
There's a bit
and I can
of
see
that.
them choking. I think that's very possible.
Yeah.
But
'cause
also
I think England have just like expected this will just come to them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because they would have and they deserve it.
I also think they've been maniacally focused on the Black Ferns.
Yes.
And there's a little bit of like insight I might have here, but like they are focused on the Black Ferns as their opposition here.
Yeah.
And there's a big bit of me that has felt the entire way like Canada are more likely to beat England in the final than
I agree with
New Zealand
that.
are.
I agree with that.
And yeah, I'm also looking at New Zealand and I'm going like, are they just the best team in the tournament right now?
Yeah, and also like
Now they've
they
built
love
into it a
that.
bit.
That pressure of like everybody's cheering for
yeah.
England. No one, everyone's just like assumed England are going to win this tournament from miles out. Just
Yeah.
going like, oh, when England win the World Cup. Like people have literally been saying
People
that
were
all
saying
year.
that like pretty much the day of the last tournament finishing.
Yeah. Yeah, saying, oh yeah, when they win it at Twickenham in 2025. They will be loving that.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, like, Kennedy Tukuafu will be putting that on the wall and saying, like, these people think they can just have this, like, granted to them. We are going to batter them.
The comparison's been made a bunch to the All Blacks and the men's side of the game between sort of 1995-ish and, 2011.
Yeah.
Where they were the best team in the world consistently, but then they always choked the World Cups.
Yeah.
And then what eventually got them over the hump was playing in a home World Cup.
It's very
Just doing
true.
it at home.
It's very
in front
true.
of a home crowd, so...
So with all of that, considering
Yeah.
if Canada get into a final against England,
Yes.
honestly, at that point, it's kind of just a rugby game, despite what you were saying earlier.
Exactly.
It kind of is. Like, when you put Canada in
is.
a rugby game, they can beat anybody. Yeah. Like, they are that level of good. And all it takes is England having a slight off day. England not running 100%, and Canada could beat them. Obviously, the thing that stands in their way is the Black Ferns because of the draw. That if they both win, they will end up in the semi-final against each other. And also, can we just say, if that happens, that is guaranteed to be the greatest Test match of the year, other than potentially the World Cup final, right? But with that, I will give Canada a healthy slice of 20%.
I was thinking 20 or 15. I think probably 20. Yeah, okay. Let's go. Okay, so we're going England 40, New Zealand 30, Canada 20, France 10.
6 or 7.
France, okay. Yeah, France
Everybody
7.
else, 3.
Yeah. Ireland 1.5, the others 1.5 between them.
Sure.
Okay. How do we feel about Brazil's chances?
Of winning the other World Cup,
Yeah.
it's pretty damn good.
They're doing
They've got the
pretty
best
well. They're
vibes,
doing
I
pretty
think. Yeah.
All right. The tournament gets back underway tomorrow.
Yes.
I'm very excited. We've talked for much longer than we intended to.
We
But
have.
that is always the case.
Yeah.
And it's such an exciting tournament.
Yeah. I cannot wait for
Me
this
neither.
half of the
I'm
tournament.
so into this. This has been like the best World Cup. It's been brilliant. And anything can happen from here.
Wallaroos are going to win it, mate.
No, I heard that.